In all my years of being a huge fan of VR, I don't think I have ever seen a hype train as massive as the current hype for this game. The excitement for Bonelab easily supersedes just about anything before it, even Half-Life Alyx. And what I find crazy is that the overall hype is probably greater than every upcoming VR headset and game combined. But why? Well, I think once I explain what Bonelab really is and talk about the true possibilities, you'll also understand. And just a warning, you're about to see a lot of these types of videos on YouTube from various people stating Bonelab is going to change VR forever. And if I had $1 for every time someone or even I said something is going to change VR forever, I'd probably be able to retire with comfort on an island somewhere. But for once, I can confidently tell you, none of this is clickbait. And this is how and why I predict that Bonelab is actually going to change VR forever, with a killer formula that will keep changing VR for years to come. Let's go back about 3 years ago. A game dropped that changed my perspective of VR moving forward. This was Stress Level Zero's previous game, Boneworks. And at the time, of course, it had a lot of excitement around its release, but the climate of VR in general was quite a bit different back then. I remember a lot of the sentiment at the time was that Boneworks was a taster, a prep for Half-Life Alyx. Alyx being a game in a legendary franchise that was finally coming to VR, it was going to be the era-defining game. Then I actually played Alyx, and while it was great and beautiful, the craziest thing happened. I ended up legitimately liking Boneworks better. A lot better, actually. It pushes the boundaries of VR, while most VR titles play it so safe that the experience becomes placid. In some ways, it's actually ruined a lot of other VR games for me. But in the time between its release back in 2019 to now, the entire VR landscape has changed immensely. Millions of new VR users have joined in. However, most of them can't even play Boneworks since it's a PCVR exclusive, and that's all about to change. Enter Bonelab. Stress Level Zero has been dropping hints at this game for months, but just yesterday they announced that it will release for PCVR and Quest 2 in just 5 days. However, this isn't just a sequel, it's essentially Boneworks but cranked up 10 levels while being accessible on hardware that is 10 levels weaker. And I've already talked quite a bit in the past on what makes Boneworks work, but in order to get into the meat of Bonelab's revolutionary features, you know, the reason why this is so hyped, I'll quickly talk about the foundation. Both Boneworks and Bonelab utilize an in-house built VR interaction engine, Marrow. This is the framework that allows every item you interact with to feel consistent. Whether that be a gun, block, piece of wood, everything has a predictable weight that feels intuitive based on how it looks and what materials it's virtually made of. And the game world feels so much more solid than most VR games because of that. It's not just physics and gravity, it's also how things feel and how things interact with each other. And since Boneworks released, Marrow has been significantly upgraded, allowing for probably one of the coolest things I have ever seen in a game, let alone a VR title. Quite a few games in the past have used some sort of body swapping or size adjustment mechanic, allowing you to progress or access parts of a level that aren't accessible as the default character. But none have had you actually be in the shoes of the swapped character, to swap avatars essentially. And Bonelab takes this idea to the absolute extreme, allowing you to, on the fly, change your avatar. But these avatars aren't just aesthetic, they completely change how you interact with the game world. Once again, utilizing that Marrow interaction engine. Everything is stat linked based on the characteristics of an avatar. If you're a massive heavy character with big arms, then your strength will be much higher, allowing you to grab enemies and environmental items with ease. Your HP will be increased and your physical size will be larger, but you'll also move slower. On the other hand, that avatar may just be too large for certain areas, so you can on the fly swap to something else, maybe a lighter and faster character that can quickly sprint and jump to locations. This allows you, the player, to play the game exactly the way that you want. If you enjoy grabbing enemies and throwing them across the map, then go ahead. If you want to play as a stealth anime maid, then go ahead as well. It's your choice. But it's so much deeper than that. You don't just have the 10 or 20 options that Stress Level Zero gives you. Anyone can upload any avatar. It could be your favorite favorite VR chat avatar that you bring in, making Bonelab feel more personal than I think any VR game has felt before. It could be something totally new. You could play through the entire game as Shrek for all I know. Because of this avatar upload system, the best characteristics of something like VR chat, a place that allows you to be anything, are brought into a game with a robust system that all works together. And that's not even the end of it. Stress Level Zero have implemented some sort of black magic that warps the constraints and tracking of every single avatar. So say for this guy, the body and chest are way larger than my physical chest, but when I put my hands to my actual chest, it seamlessly matches with the avatars. No immersion breaking clipping, and even things like recoil are directly affected by the characteristics of said avatars. But avatars are just the beginning of the complete Bonelab package. Vehicles have always been a weird thing in VR. When using them, do you stand up or sit down? How do you control something that isn't there? It's just a weird issue, and most developers end up just leaving vehicles out of VR games entirely. But Bonelab has a full system built for vehicles, and it does something pretty interesting. There seems to be no specific standing or seated mode. Instead, it's just whatever you want at any time, no menus. The game just knows and automatically adjusts. If you're standing around shooting enemies and your avatar physically sits to go in a go-kart, you could either stay standing or sit down to match. There's none of this weird place-based clipping issue that literally every single other VR game ever made suffers from. And believe me, play enough No Man's Sky VR and this is actually a really crazy system. And another interesting part of the Bone universe is the lore and story, which of course, if we're talking about a single player game, the story and storytelling are a big part of that. And this is one place where Boneworks did kind of fail, and I don't think I'll be the first person you've heard that from. Stress Level Zero knows this full well, but the actual lore behind the Bone world is incredibly interesting. Infinite AI generated worlds, void material, immortality, VR junkies, and there's a great lore video linked down below if you're interested, but I am hoping that Bonelab's storytelling is better than Boneworks, just makes for a better game. But let's be real. While I have played Boneworks campaign many times, the thing that has really kept me interested for years isn't this. It's being able to mod the game and to twist the Marrow interaction engine whatever way that I want. And this is exactly the true strength, the true beauty of Bonelab. Even if you don't give a crap about who Arthur Ford is, there are thousands of hours to be spent here. Gone are the days of having to mod Boneworks with Melon Loader and deal with weird glitches and crashes. Bonelab is pretty much the Gmod of VR, not only supporting mods, but practically putting it on the box to become a mod haven, making it as easy as possible to bring user-generated content to the forefront and to everyone. And I think everyone knows that not many people will actually go through the lengths to mod a game. It's complicated and time-consuming and pretty much reserved for enthusiasts. So they just baked mods in. The mods within Boneworks will be no different than finding an avatar or going to a world within VR chat. Bonelab will ship with a full mod SDK. Once again, similar to the VR chat SDK, allowing you to bring avatars, environments, vehicles, make entire scenarios, possibly even make entire games within Bonelab, all using the Marrow interaction engine. It can really become anything your imagination can muster. Really, Bonelab isn't the kind of game that you just buy and play once and move on. It's a game that will just keep on giving because the community that supports it and because of the system that Bonelab is based upon. It's almost kind of difficult to put into words just how many possibilities this opens up. And right now you may be saying, hey, Half-Life Alyx has mods, Blade and Sorcery has mods, other games have mods, and yeah, of course they do. But there's a key difference. Bonelab not only drops a lot of the work that people have to do to make mods, but also makes them easily accessible. And while I love these other games and I love their mods, none of them have the feeling of Marrow and Boneworks, and that's something that's harder to really quantify or explain because it's preference. However, I think the bigger deal here and the key to success is something other than all of this. Somehow, Stress Level Zero took Boneworks, a game that I even had trouble running on some levels 3 years ago on a good PC, added a ton of features, and made the game run on an Oculus Quest 2, a platform that by far has the largest VR community ever. So now, this game that legitimately adds so much value to VR in a time where we haven't gotten a good game release in years is accessible to as many people as possible. And not a watered down mobile version either. The PC and Quest version of the game are shockingly visually similar, even though the hardware is miles apart. The great part is that it's not a win for PCVR, it's not a win for Quest, it's a win for the entire VR industry. Everyone can play. The gates are unkempt. And I'm sure some of you right about now, you're hearing me talk about Bonelab, a game that has yet to release, and you're thinking, man, sounds like you're just hyping something up that you haven't even played yet. And, well, that's because, yeah, actually I am. Because all Stress Level Zero has to do at the bare minimum is just bring Boneworks to Quest. Just allow the 15 million and growing users to play that game, and that alone is a big deal. I'm so bullish because Boneworks has changed the way that I think about VR and VR games. And I know that once more people have access to it, it's gonna do the same. I've even made multiple videos breaking down exactly why I think it's so prolific. I'm a true believer. There's a special secret sauce that the Bone games have that give the game a special flair. And I 100% believe that we are right now living in an era of VR similar to Halo and the original Xbox. It's hard to realize that when we're zoomed in focusing on each Quest update, but here's some food for thought. Look at what Halo did for the Xbox and for gaming. It was the console seller. Lots of shooters have been released over the years, but from that era, what do we remember? Halo. Well, in the entire lifespan of the original Xbox, Microsoft only sold 24 million units. That total is probably right around where VR headset sales are in total. Can you name anything even close to VR's Halo? To VR's real system seller? The closest thing that I can think of is maybe VR chat, but that's kind of a little different. And I think that this might just be it. It's a bold claim, and we'll have to see not only in 5 days when Bonelab releases, but in 5 months when people start really learning the mod tools, and then again in 2 years when mod tools have been mastered and people start making some truly revolutionary things. But I wouldn't be surprised even a little bit if this game breaks records, sells like crazy, and in the future defines an entire generation of VR enthusiasts, bringing the best kind of value to VR possible. I could be wrong, the game could be butchered at launch, but from what I've seen and from my experience with this developer and their previous games, I think this is actually our Halo, if not more than that. And there's also the added benefit that so far, Stress Level Zero has just been a good company and studio. Brandon JLA mentioned that they took the profits of Boneworks, put their heads down, and with a team of 20 developers, focused hard on VR research and development. Not on microtransactions or any other thing, but hardcore VR R&D. And from Boneworks, Bonelab was birthed. And if this game does as well as I think it's going to do, well, I can only imagine what they're going to do with the profits from a game like this. And obviously, I will be making some sort of video when Bonelab fully releases. I'm not sure if that'll be a review or overview. Yeah, I really just have no idea until I play it, but I'm really excited to finally get my hands on it and share this moment with all of you. It's incredibly exciting. But what part of Bonelab are you excited about? Or are you not excited at all? Let me know, because I'm actually really curious to hear people's takes on why they don't like the game or why they are really excited. I just want to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. I couldn't do any of this without you. And thank you all so much for watching this video. It means the world to me. And don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, thrill out. Wait 1 second though. Also, the music of Boneworks is just so good.